Imagine a place that exists on no map, a blind spot in the world's eye, a city not built with stone and mortar, but forged from the very substance of dreams. Today, we journey into the obsidian wastes with Dr. Elias Thorne, a man chasing a legend, a myth whispered in the pages of an ancient text. The lost city of Veridia. The map that led Elias here wasn't ink on paper. It was a feeling, a pull of intuition and heat. He was a desert-born scholar, searching not for treasure, but for a civilization that had mastered the impossible, Oneiro-Alchemy, the art of turning the subconscious into solid matter. According to the legends, the people of Veridia didn't build their home. They dreamt it into existence. As he crested the final, massive dune, the relentless wind suddenly fell silent. The silence was thick, expectant, and there, rising from the black sand like a solidified mirage, was the city. It defied all logic, all laws of physics. Spires twisted like frozen smoke, reaching for the heavens. Bridges arched between towers with no visible supports, shimmering with a pearlescent light that flickered and changed. It looked less like a city and more like a memory of one, hazy and magnificent. Elias whispered the name, Veridia, the word tasting of dust and awe. He descended into the valley, and as he crossed the city's threshold, the air grew cool. It didn't smell of decay like most ruins. It smelled of old books, of rain on hot asphalt, and carried the faint, sharp damps of fear. This was the beginning of the mystery. Walking the streets of Veridia was like walking through someone else's mind. Elias ran his hand along a wall. It was smooth and cool, but it hummed with a low, deep vibration. The ancient codex had described the city's heart, a great engine called the resonator. It was designed to harvest the dreams of the entire population during their REM sleep, the collective hopes, the desires for beauty and safety, where siphoned, purified, and transmuted into the very ether stone that formed the city. He found himself in a vast, open plaza. The buildings here were golden, their forms gentle and curved, embracing the space. This, he realized, was a place built from dreams of love and family. He felt a profound sense of peace wash over him, an echo of joy left behind by 1,000 long-dead citizens trapped forever in the masonry. But as he ventured deeper, toward the towering central citadel, the city's mood shifted. The streets narrowed, the buildings growing darker, their stone a deep violet that seemed to swallow the light. The angles became sharp, aggressive. This was the district of ambition, forged from dreams of power, conquest, and pride. Elias felt his own heart begin to race, a seed of paranoia sprouting in his mind. He kept glancing over his shoulder, a growing dread he couldn't explain. He finally reached the citadel. Massive doors were etched with symbols representing the phases of sleep, the descent, the rapid eye, the awakening. Pushing them open, he entered the Hall of Records, a place preserved in absolute silence. He was here to find out why a civilization that could build a paradise from wishes had simply vanished from the face of the earth. In the center of the hall, on a desk of pure crystal, lay a single journal. It was written in a language Elias had spent 2 decades mastering. It was the personal log of Elias, the High Alchemist of Veridia. The early entries were triumphant, describing a golden age where hunger was dreamt away, and shelter was conjured from a simple wish for a home. But as Elias turned the pages, the optimistic tone began to fray. The supply of pure dreams is waning, Valerius had written. The people grow complacent. Their dreams are no longer vivid. The walls of the outer districts are thinning, becoming mist. To maintain Veridia, we need stronger emotions. We need the raw, unbridled power of the deep subconscious. A chill traced its way down Elias's spine. The deep subconscious wasn't the home of pleasant dreams. It was the lair of the shadow self, the repository of our darkest impulses. Valerius's solution was chilling, the nightmare protocol. If they couldn't harvest enough hope and joy to sustain the city, they would harvest fear. Fear, Valerius argued, was a far more potent and endless source of energy. Elias looked up from the journal, and the citadel walls seemed to press in on him. He now understood the twisted, agonized shapes of the spires outside. They weren't artistic flair. They were the physical manifestations of pure anxiety. He read on, his hands trembling slightly. The transmutation was successful. The next entry read, the handwriting becoming jagged and frantic. The structural integrity of the city has never been stronger. But the stone, it whispers. The shadows cast by the new towers do not move with the sun. They move on their own. Elias knew he had to see the source of this power. He descended a spiral staircase into the city's underbelly, into the very foundations where the nightmare protocol had been enacted. The air grew thick, heavy. The architecture here was a pure distillation of terror. Pillars were carved into the shape of screaming faces, stretched into agonizing columns. The floor rippled beneath his feet like disturbed water. In the center of a vast chamber, suspended over a black abyss, hung it was a massive, swinging pendulum of black crystal. With every slow, ponderous swing, it emitted a low thrum of dread that Elias felt in the fillings of his teeth. Around the pit lay the final, grim tableau of the alchemists. Skeletal figures in tattered robes, slumped where they fell. They hadn't died from violence, but from sheer exhaustion, a desperate, failed attempt to contain what they had unleashed. Elias crept to the edge of the pit. The void below was not empty. It was filled with a swirling, oily black mist that writhed and took shape. He watched in horror as it formed wolves with too many eyes, silent, raging storms, and twisted, malformed figures that looked disturbingly like himself. He was looking at the collective nightmares of an entire civilization, given form and substance. He remembered a final entry, scrawled on the back cover of the journal. He pulled it out, his hands shaking as he read it in the resonator's dim, menacing light. We were fools. We thought we could use the brick and mortar of fear to build a fortress. We forgot that a house built of nightmares is inhabited by them. The city is not crumbling. It is waking up. The shadow has detached itself from the dreamer. Veridia is no longer a city of people. It is a city of monsters, and we are the intruders in their dream. Just then, a wet, tearing sound echoed through the chamber. Elias spun around. The shadow cast by one of the screaming pillars had just peeled itself away from the stone. It rose, a two-dimensional void becoming a three-dimensional predator with a jagged slit for a mouth. Then another shadow detached from the wall. And another. The nightmares were waking up. They could sense a new dreamer. They could smell his fear. Elias's own terror was now fuel. The resonator began to swing faster, the thrumming growing louder, reacting to his spiking adrenaline. The very room began to contort around him, the walls closing in, a physical manifestation of his own claustrophobia. He had to regain control. Come, he told himself, closing his eyes. It's psycho-reactive architecture. If I panic, the room kills me. He forced his breathing to slow, picturing the safe, dusty library back at his university. He visualized a door, a simple wooden door leading back to the surface. When he opened his eyes, the nightmare shades had paused, confused by the sudden drop in their fierce sustenance. And there, in the twisting wall of the chamber, a new, simple archway had formed. He ran. He sprinted through the archway as the city itself seemed to scream behind him. The spires of anxiety twisted, trying to block his escape, but Elias focused his entire will on one single thought. The image of the open desert. He was the dreamer now, and he was dreaming of the exit. He burst through the main gates and tumbled onto the black sand of the wastes, gasping for air as the sun began to set. He looked back one last time. As the light faded, the city transformed. The beautiful, shimmering bridges dissolved into webs of shadow. The towers bent into grasping claws. The city moaned, a sound of structural stress that sounded horrifyingly like human weeping. Veridia was a cage, a prison built by a civilization that wanted paradise so badly, they were willing to carve it from their own darkness. They tried to conquer their nature, to separate the dream from the dreamer, and were consumed by their own creation. Elias stood up, the journal safe in his satchel. He had the story, but as he walked away, he couldn't shake the feeling that the city was watching him. The alchemists hadn't vanished. They were still there, trapped in the stone, living an eternal nightmare within the walls of their own fears. The wind howled across the wastes, but now it sounded like a warning, a whisper carried on the air. Do not dream too deep. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the shadows. If you find stories of lost worlds and forgotten lore as fascinating as we do, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring that bell for more explorations into the unknown. Until next time.